which is your favorite area? Because everybody has his favorite.
Yeah.
For example, my favorite area is Shanti Niketan. My favorite area of doing business is Jor Bagh. Which is your favorite area where it's easier to do business?
Favorite area is whichever area the client is open to sort of take our recommendations fully to the tilt. जिसमें कोई budget में hurdles नहीं आते, कोई time पे hurdles नहीं आते. All of that area.
How much people or your clients think about maintenance of such homes post-handover? Because उसको भी maintain करके रखना है for a longer period of time.
People do, and we also keep that in mind when we are selecting materials. And when a client approaches us, right? So in our first few conversations, we also sort of understand how the client is in terms of maintenance. Because a lot of clients are, neat freaks, जैसे कहते हैं, they like to, घर पे सफाई रखना, सब कुछ करना. कुछ लोग होते नहीं करते, the couple है, they are doing a job, they don't have time to look into the house. So, even materials we recommend based on how a client's nature is in terms of post-care of the stuff. You don't want to recommend a really expensive material and बाद में उसकी maintenance ही ना हो, तो, that will be as good as not doing it then after, 6-8 months.
What do you feel is the importance of kitchens and bathrooms in today's environment for people who are really going all out for a home?
Again, like I said, kitchens is something which used 3 to 4 times a day, right? So, and most of our clients have staff which is using it, they have house helps which are using it. So like I said, mentioned earlier in one of your earlier questions that, the quality of hardware which you use in kitchens is very, very important, because, with help and everyone using the kitchens, it will be subjected to rough usage, because the multiple using, even if, say any 4-5 people using one item, there is going to be different usage.
Definitely.
So उस पे issue होता है. So I always recommend use again your handbake, half-lay, again readily available, best in class.
हर घर एक स्टोरी है. Story about design, story about luxury, story about the people living in there. हर घर क्योंकि ये कहानी कहता है, इसलिए घर को संवारना और सजाने के लिए हर लग्जरी होम को सजाने वाला एक माइकलएंजेलो है. Well, today we have Nitant from Bard Spaces, which is a super luxury home interior firm which deals in fantastic home interiors. Hi, Nitant.
Hi.
So, Nitant, as we see, as the luxury home market segment is increasing leaps and bounds in the industry, what do you feel is the major change that has happened in the last 5 years in the design and in the build of homes?
So Rajat, major change, design keeps on evolving. So it's not stagnant, right? So if you look at every 10 years, 5 years time period, design keeps on changing and evolving. What materials were used, say 20 years back, they aren't used now, or some of them are, and a lot of them keep on changing. So major change would be just, I feel, people are spending a lot more on the services part of it, which is the quality of, say, small things like your pipes, your wires, because people, even if you install, say, the fanciest of, say, shower heads and everything, the pressure of the water is not that much. It's used as, right? So, I mean, those aspects people are spending a lot of money on. And of course, new materials keep on coming. Like every day they keep on, something or the other keeps on coming every day, So whether it's marble, whether it's, wall finishes, wall coverings, wallpapers, different types of wallpapers. So it is just becoming better and better every year. And so we also need to be up to date with what's happening, in world over. And with the increase in globalization, anything from, say, if you want from China, from Turkey, or from Europe, anything can come in a shortened period of time. So we have to be aware of what is happening everywhere in the world. So it is not just India centric, it is world centric. So you have to be open to the entire globe in terms of what is happening.
I'm sure with the kind of YouTube and Instagram availability throughout the world, people must be coming up with
various requests from design
Absolutely. So everyone thinks they are the interior designer, right? So
Okay.
every homeowner thinks they're an interior designer. Every homeowner has a Pinterest board.
from. Okay.
So a lot of queries we get like, boss, I have my Pinterest is ready. I know the designs. You just come and execute it.
All right.
No consideration for the scale, the size of the room, the scale, where the materials are going to come from, how, because a lot of times a client says, Meko, this, ye diwar aisi kar do, ye diwar aisi kar do, ye diwar aisi kar do.
Haan.
So jab tum, when you mix three designs together, of course, wo ek khichdi pak jati, that is not going to be like, of course, what it comes out to be.
True.
So design also is not just putting a lot of stuff there. It is also how it all comes together, basically.
So, I've seen a lot of people are now designing their homes very minimalistically and moving towards home automation.
Yeah.
What is your take on that?
So home automation is a very, very important part of the whole design aspect of it, because what home automation majorly controls, of course, you have your Alexa and your Siris and everything. You have your Apple Home and everything where you can control, say, switch on the AC or switch on the light. But what we feel as designers, that is a use case thing for the user. But for the designer, what part is we really want in a home in terms of automation is the lighting automation. Mainly,
Okay.
Because light plays a very, very important part in the aesthetics of design. Right?
Definitely.
So in the night, now with automation, you can set moods. You can have like, if this room is there, and if I've got friends coming, I can set up a mood. If I have got if I'm sitting with my kids, I've got a different kind of room. If I've got sitting with my friends, different work, different. So all those moods can be set, and the lights can be dimmed or tuned now to even like say 1% or point something of a percent.
Oh, that's
Yeah. So which you cannot do manually. So which only can be done when it's automated.
Definitely.
So that can't be done with a switch which is on and off. So yeah, so I mean, light automation is very important. Then of course, when you have really high ceilings, and curtain automation also becomes a very important part.
Oh, definitely.
So these two are critical in terms of design and use case. Rest of course is aesthetics. Rest of course is use case. There's no limit to it. जितना जहाँ तक आप जाना चाहते हो, आप जा सकते हो उसमें.
In fact, I've always wanted to understand from the best in the industry. So if I had 5 crores to put in a villa on interiors, what would be an ideal interior like, or what would you suggest me to go for?
See, now again, budgets, you touched an important question, because we get a lot of times, major queries, अच्छा ये मेरे को design है, या ये मेरा घर है, कितने का बनेगा, कितने रुपए square foot का बनेगा. You said 5 crores. Of course, that depends on कितना square foot area.
Definitely.
So when we talk about rates or budgets, it's usually per square foot.
Definitely.
So because that gives a ballpark figure of what sort of materials we can use, right? Now, if you generally, and there's no thumb rule, because again, without knowing what sort of design is there in terms of कि मार्बल लगा रहे हैं, कि हम वुडन फ्लोरिंग कर रहे हैं, कि हम माइक्रो कंक्रीटिंग कर रहे हैं, सीलिंग पे कितनी हमारी कैसी पीओपी हो रही है, मोटिव्स हैं, क्या है, all of that. So there are a lot of permutation combinations. So it's not as straightforward as कि
मैं पैसा खर्चना क्या कर सकता हूँ?
हाँ, मतलब पैसा ही खर्चना है. Of course, a budget we keep in mind, and I'll come to that. But ऐसा नहीं होता कि आप मुझे फोन उठाओ और पूछो कि बॉस, I want to do a house. How much is it going to cost? Day one, I will not be able to give you that figure.
Definitely.
Of course, I can give you an idea if you give me a reference कि I want something like this and I'm at this. इधर से इधर तक मेरे को पहुंचना है point A से point B पे, तो कितने पैसे लगेंगे मेरे?
Definitely.
वो थोड़ा बहुत आइडिया आपको मिल सकता है. Of
जी.
course, that idea we can give कि इस पे चलो आपकी सर्विसेज में इतने लगेंगे, आपकी इंटीरियर फिनिशिंग में इतने लगेंगे, आपके फिक्स्ड मिल वर्क में इतने लगेंगे, आपके लूज फर्नीचर में इतने लगेंगे, आपके एक्सेसराइजेशन पे इतने लगेंगे, स्टाइलिंग पे इतने लगेंगे. So all of that categories we have, and the kind of houses we do, which are high-end luxury houses, uska of course we can give a ballpark figure, but it's not before we know what the end design is going to be.
Definitely.
So end design में we need, like you said, कि बहुत minimal घर बन रहे हैं आजकल, right? So that is mainly a very Nordic, Japan-y sort of a aesthetic sense, it looks beautiful on Instagram, it looks beautiful on Pinterest, but very difficult to execute. It becomes a challenge for us also, because एक चीज को अच्छा करना कि उसमें कम चीजें हैं and then still make it look luxurious, that's a very big challenge. बहुत चीजें डालकर it's very easy किसी चीज को अच्छा करना. That is relatively easy. If you give me a blank canvas, blank budget, I will be able, of course, make it look really good. But the challenge arises जब कम हो. कम में क्या होता है, and कम does not mean कि वो cheap हो जाता है. क्योंकि जब कम होता है, then you cannot hide materials. So materials जो expose ज्यादातर होंगे, they have to be best in class. अगर मेरा सिर्फ मार्बल है, उसके ऊपर कोई रग नहीं है, for example, then my marble has to be spotless.
Definitely.
Then I cannot hide it through paneling, through this thing, so even your furniture pieces, furniture hai, so all your furniture ki stitching detail tak has to be ekdam in jaise kehte hain na 00 mm karke. So that needs to be perfect. So less does not mean ki
you can give away.
सस्ते में हो जाएगा या वो बल्कि और महंगा शायद हो.
Okay. I remember when I used to do commercial real estate, people used to talk about doing exposed concreting, exposed ceilings.
That's very in these days.
But people are now started doing it homes as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We are doing it in a lot of houses.
Yes, but the concreting per se of that, when you're doing a exposed concreting today, the cost I think is more than a normal concreting, because obviously there's a levels that
of course
you need to maintain.
There's different chemical composition of that, so of course the cost will be more. It's not just basic job cement dekhte ho bahar. It's a different material. There's color mix to it. You can choose the color palette you want. There are different finishes. There's lime-based finish in there. There's concrete finish in that. Lime-based usually walls में use होता है. Micro-concreting आपके flooring में ज़्यादा use होता है. So there are different. It's a different material.
Definitely.
It looks and feels like concrete, but it is a different material, and it is expensive. It is not कि आप बोलो कि tile के जितना सस्ता होगा या किसी और के जितना सस्ता होगा. It is a luxury material. It is not a very commonly used material. Okay.
And another question that comes to my mind, typically whenever we do transaction in Lutyens, the property prices in Lutyens Delhi, Golf Links, part of Jor Bagh, Sundarnagar, and Vasant Vihar, Shanti Niketan as well. People nowadays tend to buy houses and then they renovate the houses as per their requirement, because tearing it down to ground 00 and redoing it may be a task in itself. Yeah. So what do you feel structurally, are these houses still livable, or tomorrow there is a hidden cost that comes to your suddenly that probably something like a pipe needs to be redone, or a wiring needs to be redone, or a portion of the house has to be torn down and redone?
So again, when you talk about Lutyens Delhi, a lot of houses there, of course you're not allowed to construct more. So जितना है उसी structure को हम maintain करके चलते हैं. Permissions भी उसकी नहीं होती, to do it. You cannot sort of make new structures with it or increase the FAR or the covered area of the plot. Having said that, when we do houses in Lutyens, we try to maintain the civil structure as much as possible.
Definitely.
But having said that, the rest of the site is entirely stripped down.
Okay.
So that includes the wires, the conduits, everything. So everything is redone. Waterproofing, everything is redone. कोई walls भी करनी हो dry walls में होता है. So it's not, you cannot use so temporary walls जिसको हम कहते हैं.
Okay.
Dry walls, partition walls जिनको हम use करते हैं.
जी.
So उसमें होता है, and then as such there is no issues because everything is redone. So your piping, plumbing is redone, waterproofing is redone, electric is redone. So कोई पुराना service material तो हम use ही नहीं कर रहे. So it is just the structure. And structure is not related to time. Structure की integrity, पुराने structures तो खैर बड़े ही strong होते थे. Only issue is there were a lot of load bearing walls, so you can't really open spaces मिलना मुश्किल होता है.
Okay.
So because आजकल के जो structures पे pillars पे बनते हैं, right?
True.
I mean, so you can knock off any wall. 4.5 inch की wall होती है, आप उसको knock off कर सकते हैं. But ये पुराने structures में सारे like 9 inch, 13 inch walls, so उनको you can't really sort of tear them down and make the area bigger.
Definitely. So it's very intriguing for me to understand how things are changing. Now the biggest element or a luxury element that's coming from the westernized countries is jacuzzis and swimming pools.
Mm-hmm.
What is the demand like for jacuzzis and swimming pools in Lutyens or the farmhouses that we do?
So farmhouses तो सब में ही होता है.
सब में ही.
So farmhouses because open area होता है, swimming pool and water bodies are something which is almost there 98-99% of the houses we do. Having said that, villas and all में जो हम करते हैं, Lutyens हो गया या South Delhi में generally हो गया या even other parts of India we do work all over. So demand is there a lot. चाहे वो terrace में plunge pools हो, चाहे वो basements में pools हो. So demand is a lot. ऐसा नहीं है कि pools and all people are this thing to not get in the house. It is the demand of water bodies. Swimming pool especially, jacuzzis, sauna, steam, everything is a lot.
Okay. Nitant, now that we understand the modernity of the scheme of things, what are the top 3 elements in a home that you feel one should actually splurge on and which is like a no discussion point that you feel should be कि जी इन तीन पॉइंट्स पे तो आपको करना ही पड़ेगा खर्चा, और you should invest majorly in these three things.
Fair enough. So, I mean, देखो, like a home, everything needs to come together, so cohesive होता है. But if you want me to prioritize, top 3 तो नहीं, मतलब only 3 तो नहीं. There are multiple things where you should not compromise on. But if I have to rank, like अगर मेरे को top 3 ही निकालने पड़े, one, of course, like I mentioned earlier, also services is जो भी चीज behind the wall जाती है.
Definitely.
जैसे आपकी पाइप्स हो गई, वायर्स हो गई, ऑटोमेशन की वायर्स हो गई. आजकल वाईफाई समथिंग इज वेयर पीपल की Cat 6 वायरिंग होती है, जब पूरा घर वाईफाई से कवर हो जाता है. ऐसा नहीं होता एक कमरे से आप दूसरे कमरे में जा रहे हो, यू नीड टू चेंज योर से वाईफाई राउटर, वो अपने आप ऑटोमेटिकली मैश से कनेक्ट हो जाता है, बिकॉज दीज आर डे टू डे थिंग्स. आपका पानी का प्रेशर कैसा रहा है, वो डे टू डे चीजें हैं, right? So if you're having a shower, these are small things, but they affect you on a daily basis, right?
Definitely.
Similar thing with electric, similar thing with automation, with HVAC, all these things. Services is something where it is, even if a client says to use SAPA, we will not use. I will not do a project जिसमें मेरे को best in class material नहीं use करने को मिले.
Okay.
So when I say best in class, it is not कि मेरे को कोई Germany से specially कोई wire import करनी है. That is not best in class. When I say best in class, basically means best in class readily available.
Okay.
So a brand जिसकी सर्विस हो सके, जो इसके पार्ट्स मिल सके, इवन बाद में जाकर मेंटेनेंस के लिए इजी होना चाहिए, उस ब्रांड का रिलेटेड बेस्ट इन क्लास मटेरियल. सो आप हैवल्स हो गए, पॉलीकैप हो गए, मैं जनरल एग्जांपल दे रहा हूँ वायर्स में, डीलिंग की हो गई, Cat 6 की वायर्स. तो आई मीन दीज आर जनरल ब्रांड जो मिल सकता है हर जगह, बट इनका भी वी वांट टू यूज द A+ क्वालिटी इन दीज.
Definitely.
So that is point number 1. Point number 2 is if you are interested or want to make a luxury home, right? So I feel your flooring is something which is paramount importance, which is basically सबके marble की flooring होती है, right? So I mean, जैसे हम घर करते हैं उस पर roughly 70-75% coverage आपकी marble की flooring की होती है.
Definitely.
So the quality of marble which you use, बहुत लोग marble के नाम पे just want to use marble and they don't want to cut corners with the quality of marble. Marble का क्या issue क्या होता है कि after laying and after polish पता चलता है कि marble actually में चीज क्या है.
Definitely.
Because when you go to buy in a store, इतने केमिकल्स, epoxy लगा होता है, वो कोई नहीं बता सकता, हम भी नहीं बता सकते उसके अंदर क्या है.
True.
कितने क्रैक्स है, क्या कहाँ फिलिंग हुई है, जब तक वो लग कर कटता नहीं है मार्बल का टॉप लेयर, you really don't get to know.
Okay.
So invest in a good stone is something which is very, very important, because that is going to last. Stone outlasts any material in the house. So आपकी वुडन फ्लोरिंग खराब हो सकती है ओवर टाइम, टाइलें निकलने लग जाती हैं, so stone is something which would last a long time. So that is 2. And third would be your quality of hardware which you use in your doors and everything. They also have to be top notch,
Okay.
So आप Hafele का use करें, Hete का use करें, किसका कर रहे हैं, so that quality of hardware, wardrobes में क्या hinges लग रहे हैं, kitchen में क्या लग रहे हैं, the quality of hardware is
Because उन्होंने रोज यूज होना है.
Exactly. So जो चीज रोज यूज हो रही है,
जी,
आप उसको बेस्ट इन क्लास उस पे पैसे खर्चिए, वो ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट होता है देन जो चीज वंस इन अ मंथ यूज होगी. एंड यूजुअली इंडियन हाउस होल्ड में उल्टा होता है, हम अपना सबसे महंगा कमरा हमारे घर पे लिविंग रूम होता है जो हम महीने में शायद एक दफा यूज करें जब कोई गेस्ट है.
ट्रू.
सो वो हम सबसे ज्यादा फर्नीचर उसका महंगा होगा, सबसे ज्यादा मार्बल उसका महंगा होगा, सबसे ज्यादा शैंडलियर उसका महंगा होगा. सो दैट वर्क्स प्रेडोमिनेंटली जो उल्टा होता है साहब
जी.
But yeah, so those are the top 3 things जो just generally जो हर रोज चीज आइटम यूज हो रही है, that you should not compromise on.
In fact, recently I was showing a client a 1200 square yard floor in Vasant Vihar. He tells me if the house is facing the park and I'm paying for the house, why should the living room be in the front? Why can't it be on the back side?
Fair enough.
Because I am paying for the house and the master bedroom should be facing a park.
Fair enough.
So that was a big...
Fair enough and a valid question. I mean, you're going to see, I would rather get up to a good view
Definitely.
than have to travel to my living room, go out with a cup of coffee and have it. I'd rather have something which is
Definitely.
very accessible from my bedroom. So that is completely valid. But हाँ, उसके अपने structure के क्या होते हैं, builder floors में क्या होते हैं, अपने kitchen की placement all that important होती है, because हर तरफ से आपका openable नहीं होता. But 1200 square yards में तो होगा, but apart from that, छोटे घरों में नहीं होता है.
Definitely. So now, as you spoke about OEMs being available within the country and serviceability, what do you feel, how much should one think of, or how much people or your clients think about maintenance of such homes? post handover, because उसको भी maintain करके रखना है for a longer period of time.
Absolutely. Yeah. So people do, and we also keep that in mind when we are selecting materials. And when a client approaches us, right? So in our first few conversations, we also sort of understand how the client is in terms of maintenance. Because a lot of clients are, neat freaks, जैसे कहते हैं, they like to, घर पे सफाई रखना, सब कुछ करना. कुछ लोग होते नहीं करते, the couple है, they are doing a job, they don't have time to look into the house. So, even materials we recommend based on how a client's nature is in terms of post-care of the stuff. You don't want to recommend a really expensive material, and बाद में उसकी maintenance ही ना हो, तो, that will be as good as not doing it then after, 6-8 months. So, वो फायदा नहीं होता, but clients do care about it. So, and we also as designers, we want to sort of recommend materials which are easy care. किसके घर में dogs ज़्यादा है, so we make sure that the fabric जो use हो रहा है वो pet friendly हो.
Okay.
Small things like that we take into account. अगर dogs घर पे है तो even जो polished wood पे use हो रही है वो matter करता है, because dogs can scratch it.
Definitely.
So to get a background of what the client is and how the clients are is very, very important before getting to the design process or the material selection process of it.
In fact, you'll be happy to know, when I started doing real estate business, I used to be very dependent on, my attention used to go on to the how the house is looking, what is it facing in terms of vastu. But in today's environment, after knowing how much trouble people get into after they buy a property, in terms of maintenance, in terms of operations, in terms of plumbing, electrical, mechanical parts of the house, my first thing is I go and check kahin spark to nahi hua hua? The marble is rightly laid.
Yeah.
Is there no seepage or not?
Absolutely.
So which actually brings out a lot of pain that the client possibly may have at a later date.
Absolutely.
And specifically when the people are buying older houses. So for example, if somebody is buying a bungalow in Vasant Vihar to renovate it and live it, so obviously he would need to take care of all this before he moves in.
Absolutely.
So I've been actually advising a lot of my clients to, engage with agencies who do pre-occupation checks of the homes in terms of plumbing, electrical, seepages, with various scanners that have come up in today's environment, so that their occupancy is peaceful. And the amount of labor, the cost of labor, availability of manpower in India, everybody knows the situation, is the biggest concern. And it's not like before that, you could just call somebody and he could come.
Yeah.
So